culture curator here in Toronto and also co-founder of New Currency, which is a global platform dedicated to the exchange of ideas. And today we're doing an artist talk with the amazing photographer Luis Mora. For Mirror Mirror. For anybody who doesn't know what Mirror Mirror is an online gallery and editorial platform aimed at providing infrastructure for the continuity of art, design, and culture, and for publishing critical writing on the creative industry, both amidst the following the COVID-19 pandemic. And today we have Luis Mora, as I've mentioned. Luis, how are you introducing yourself these days?
I'm introducing well, first, super happy to be here, man. I'm happy that I'm talking to you right now. Yeah. I'm introducing myself as a Colombian artist and commercial photographer based in Toronto.
All right, bet. So I guess you've curated this amazing gallery show online, and I guess the first question I'm really interested to know is, like, for somebody who has worked, who did an exhibition last year, you had all your work on the wall, and now your work is on online. How is sort of that, like, adaptation to that feeling, and how has that process been, like, showing work in a very digital format?
Yeah, good question to start with. Thank you so much. Yeah, in the span of in less than a year, I finally got the chance to show my work in a gallery and being there and welcoming people. And then at the same time, we ended up publishing a book that was part of that gallery too, of that exhibition. And then a few months after, I'm doing something like this. I do believe that for my work, for my photography, there's always something special about going to a place and seeing the print and seeing the framing, seeing, like, there's so much, like, technical aspect of, like, how to put a show that I was really happy to see people coming in. But then I welcome opportunities like this, like putting my work online. I couldn't stop thinking about the idea of someone in their pajamas in the morning, logging into the website and looking at the work. Like, I think there's something special about that too. I like the idea of getting ready and going to a gallery opening and seeing the work, maybe meeting the artist. But I think there's something special about the idea of just sitting and taking your time at home. Like, I'm happy to think that there's one, I don't know, photo student from Ryerson at OCAD going through those images at home on their own time, having a drink, and then going back later in the day with no problem, without asking anyone for permission. So I appreciate that.
Right. Yeah, I think like, this whole new access to, I guess, like, work online is interesting because, I mean, it makes it more democratic. Like, I'm not paying $3 to get to the gallery show or an Uber. But I think for me, like, what I miss personally is kind of the randomness in, meeting new people at the gallery show, or, me exchanging ideas with another person on the work that you're seeing in a space. And you can't really do that online. I do think, like, there is a bit of an escape, I guess, you can get when you have work, beautifully displayed online, like as Mirror Mirror has done, which is interesting because, I look at, like, there's one thing you call your exhibition called looking back, right? And, there's one thing to sort of, like, look back of what the past has been, and, like, pre-pandemic, blah, blah, blah. And now we're in a pandemic, and you've kind of, like, used this opportunity to kind of reflect on your work. And I want you to talk about that, because I think what's interesting, first, like, one part of the exhibition I'll bring up is, the magazine spreads that you have in the exhibit. It's like, you're seeing kind of like an open display of, like, all the favorite pages that you're into. Talk to me a little bit about that process, and even, like, choosing the pages that you want to, like, photograph of these magazines and have them online, and, like, what do you want us to take from it?
Yeah, thank you. I think one of the main thoughts that I had when I got invited to be part of the gallery was to uh, I ended up spending a lot of time during quarantine from the beginning, going through my archives. I think at the beginning, like a lot of people that I knew, you were worried about like, okay, what am I gonna do? What can I do inside? Waking up every day and doing a lap around the house. The house became my gym and my office and my everything, right? And at one point, I just ended up slowing it down and taking advantage of that slow time to go through my archive, through
Right.
prints, through, and not only through my work, but like items that I've collected. And it happens to be magazines, like a collection that I've been trying to do for many years since I was in high school. And I found so much joy going through those magazines. I think in the past 3 years, I've been thinking about what am I gonna do next, and again, like going to the gallery opening and going to this and going out and not spending time at home going through those items that I've collected. And it reminded me a lot of how I used to find out about people that I liked from a
Mm,
graphic designer. Like a magazine. I remember getting magazines not only for whoever was on the cover, but I wanted to know like who took the photo, who was the stylist of that shoot. Like credits became a huge thing. That was
right.
really for many years. That was Tumblr, MySpace, Instagram in one. Like in the magazine was all that stuff in one. And hunting magazines was the best too. Like the idea of like finding, because I started maybe buying magazines when I lived in Miami as a young like high school student, and getting
Hmm.
magazines from Europe wasn't it was really hard. You will have to find you will have so I ended up I wanted to take the advantage of having a platform like Mirror Mirror, not only to show my work, but to be able to show images of archives that I had. And hopefully people
Right.
can get inspired to do the same, like going through your books or CDs or something like that. Um, I remember the magazine again, like credits, like how buying a CD and you wanted to know who the design studio that did it and stuff. I remember
Right.
finding a lot about people, and then those names used to pop and go online, and then finding their website or something.
Mm,
So that was the main thing about those spreads, and then photographing them was I did it for the gallery, like those images that people see in I didn't have those already. I did them maybe 3 weeks ago. I ended up spending about 2 days, and I took there's only 100 in the website, but I actually ended up shooting 420 spreads.
wow.
Um, I digitalized it, I guess that's how you will say it. And it's really beautiful, like seeing the things that I was looking at. And depending of the year, that depends on what I was looking at, what kind of stuff I was looking at. So yeah, I enjoyed that a lot.
Yeah, I think like I love the fact that you said you spent like a good 2 days kind of like photographing it, and it feels like it's almost like I mean therapeutic in a way for you, right? Like,
Very much, because it serves like a diary, like the work of other
mm,
people. I ended up before shooting those magazines. I ended up spending a lot of time archiving a lot of prints, my own work, everything that I did for Save with Flowers, the project that I ended up putting out last year, and then got to a point of magazines and books. And I like the idea of other people's work becoming your diary too. In these magazines, I don't have any
mm,
work in these magazines because it was when I was like before I went to school for photography, and those magazine covers and all that stuff. It takes me back to a specific time in my life. So I cherish them a lot. I really like to having them around.
hmm. What about like also on the Mirror Mirror website, you also have um roses photographed at home.
Right. That was the first room we ended up putting out. Um,
Yeah.
I ended up making those images um, while I was working in the project Say with Flowers, which we're gonna
Okay.
show some of those images later next week. I think is like
Okay.
one of the last rooms is those images. But
Mhm.
Say with Flowers is a project that I did back in Colombia about a flower market in Bogota, Colombia. And in between trips, when I came back to my house here in Toronto, I I started going to flower shops here and going through their flower cases and storage rooms. And I started finding a lot of Colombian flowers. And then I started photographing those flowers here. Colombia is the second biggest exporter of flowers in the world. And I really, I kind of like fell in love with this romantic idea of like 1 week I was in Colombia taking photos of those flowers in the market. And when I flew back in, they were already here in those flower shops. Um,
Right.
so I decided to start bringing those flowers home. I photographed those images were made here where I'm sitting right now, like in this living room, just with daylight
Right.
coming through or with the equipment that I had here in the house. So very similar to spending time with magazines, I was like spending time with those flowers. Like I love
Mm,
the idea of spending a whole day with them. I'm happy that I can do that.
right. You know what's also interesting too about the other room here too, called window seat.
Yeah.
It's very of the time. It's very of the time in the fact that like, I mean, I travel a lot, and just for me not to be on a plane this year is very like, um, I guess, I guess very sad, I guess, you know. And I'm looking at
Uh-huh.
these amazing images of like literally images from your travels, right? And
Yeah.
did you have any? Where did you plan to travel this year? I'm curious if this pandemic wasn't a
I
thing.
I was gonna be in Peru, in South
Okay,
America.
right.
That was my main. After finishing the project in Colombia, say with flowers, um,
Mhm.
a client took me to Peru to shoot a project there, and then I think I found my next project. You know, like there's a
Right.
place and there's something that I was able to find there that I want to go and explore. It's a salt mine in Peru, and
Okay.
I can say that my 2019 was all about flowers, and then my 2020 was going to be about salt. It sounds so random to say stuff like that, but but that was going to be after making sale with flowers, I decided that I'm going to champion South America for the next 5 years when it comes to my personal work.
Right.
So Peru and Mexico were like in my to-do list, and I was finally gonna go this year to Peru, and I don't know if it's gonna happen,
Mm,
but that's fine. It's there in the to do list. We're working on it because I want to go with the team,
right.
and and those images of window seat. I've been shooting those for like the past 3 years, and and I love again that they're kind of like a diary of how I used to fly before all this happened. And I
Right.
like that. Like I think that's why I take a lot of images is to remember those because those images started as an exercise. Like I was just in the plane having a hard time falling asleep. Um, it was the first time that I went to London, and that flight is pretty long. So
Yeah.
I started taking images through the window, and they came out really nice. So I kept doing it every time I took a plane. I made sure I had a window seat.
Mhm.
Um, and one of the first thoughts that came to mind when seeing those images after when I was archiving them last week was that the way we used to move is not the same anymore.
Right.
And people are flying. You see some people starting flying in places, but it will never be the same, right? Never. There's no way you're gonna hop on a plane and not think about a pandemic and things like that. And I
Yeah.
like that those registrations that I made with those photos was before this.
Right.
Um, I like them. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, there's one thing I keep on hearing in this conversation is this kind of emphasis on keeping a diary through images, right? And you know, with this pandemic, I'm curious, what is the images that you're taking that is the diary of this moment for you?
Nothing actually. Sometimes,
Mm,
sometimes, sometimes you have blank pages in your diary, and it's an interesting thing. Because a few people have asked me, is like, what's the series of images that you're gonna make about the pandemic, and nothing has come to mind, and I think that's okay. I, I, in my personal life, uh, I compare this a lot to 5 years ago. I was diagnosed with cancer. I got really sick for a whole year. and then everything came out positive. I was able to get over that stuff. I came out, and a lot of people are like, "Ooh, like, are you gonna take pictures in the hospital while you're going through this?" And I never did. Like when you go through something so hard, like right away as a photographer, I think you're expected to like make these images about and sometimes I don't. And I don't know if I'll make work through this time. Like the work that I did was to go through the stuff that I already did, archiving and reading those magazines and reading those books. So maybe I'll take mental pictures here about everything that's happening, but it hasn't inspired me to make images, definitely. So yeah,
Right.
I don't know if that was a bad answer. Sorry.
No, I think that's an amazing answer, man, because I actually never thought of it that way, because I
Yeah,
mean, I
yeah.
dabble in photography myself, and
I
I guess
know.
I was
Yeah.
at home, and I think I guess my photography practice is really based on me participating um in the culture, whether it's going out and meeting people and documenting my friends. And obviously I couldn't do that, so I found myself just taking pictures of plants and grass. And that's close.
No, which which is fine. Like I
Yeah,
love the idea of someone discovering photography through this time, because I don't know, they were doing something else before, and then they were at home spending a lot of time, and they picked up a camera and made beautiful self portraits. That's
right.
amazing. I love that situations like this put people in those set of minds. For me, really, yeah, I actually, again, I ended up spending more organizing those thoughts and those ideas, um, and not thinking about what's next. Obviously, this project, there's commercial work that's happening, but when it came to my personal work, um, I decided to actually sit here and read a lot. Reading and writing, I'm really bad at writing.
Right.
English is still my second language, and and,
Mhm.
and not I'm not, I don't want to become a writer and being able to write about my work. I prefer to work with people that can do that.
Right.
But getting better at those things, kind of like the simple things of actually finishing an article,
Right.
or writing actual thoughts about my work and sending those to writers that I work with. Things like that became more than picking up the camera and
Right.
making pictures.
What are you reading these days?
A lot about Peru.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Obviously, I try to keep myself informed about news that's happening here in the US since they live there, about Colombia because they still have a lot of family there. But if I am gonna put some time into reading a few articles, listening to a few interviews, it's about Peru because I want to go back there and work in this salt mine. So that's
Right.
that's what I'm doing. Yeah.
So is that the process? Is that kind of like your process when it comes to like developing these photography projects? Is like you really kind of like sink yourself in the I guess academia or history around the culture or the place that you want to go and like kind of like do a project in? Like was that your process for doing the same with flowers in Colombia?
Yes, man. Yes, yes. Because like I said, like I'm also a commercial photographer,
Mm,
and um, commercial photography a lot of the times it doesn't give you that. It doesn't give you the opportunity to sit down and do proper research, read a book of someone that maybe has like double into the project that you're working on. Like it just the time the way commercial work now, it happens so fast that
yeah.
you don't get the chance to really get involved in that. Sometimes you do. Sometimes you work with companies that you can, and that's why I decided to start working on my art practice and my personal work because I knew I could do that. I went to Colombia 4 times to
Wow.
do sales flowers. I wouldn't be able to do that for a commercial job. Like I
Right.
wouldn't be able to spend so much time. I could travel places because that's how I ended up in Peru, but last year. But the idea that I could just go and stay in a market for 2 weeks and talk to people without taking a single photo, I'm happy that I can do that with this project. So that is the process that I'm hoping to do from now on. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, that's amazing, man. On I think was it I don't know if I think it was Saturday morning you did um kind of like you were playing music live on Mirror
Yeah,
Mirror.
yeah,
Yeah, like
that was really fun, man. That was
yeah,
I mean, and I'm happy that I'm talking to you. I consider you someone that knows so much about music, and you being a DJ and having the experience of curating like playlists. Like I envy people like you that can like stand in a room and play music, because I will never be able to do that. Like
right,
I'm scared of doing something like that. Like I prefer to like play music here at home, but I think that envy that I have for people that can play music like that, and that's why I ended up proposing the idea of like, all right, if I can go live, let me show some like footage that I have with me about salsa music.
right.
The history of salsa music is amazing. If anyone
Mm,
that's listening to us today, that's interested in learning a little bit about like Latin history and music, I think salsa is the best way to do it. Um, so through, I think it was like about 6 hours that I went live, just showing videos and clips. And
yeah.
I was telling Eric that I always have this dreams about one day YouTube is gonna disappear. So when I find videos or footage that I really like, I make sure I download it from YouTube. I don't know if that's legal. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that, but I do. I don't know.
Yeah,
We can cut this later. I don't know. But yeah, I found I think a lot of people know how to do this, but there's a way that you can download the video and keep it like as a file. So in that state of mind of thinking, oh my God, YouTube could disappear one day, I found a lot of footage of salsa music, and that's what I was playing. It was really nice.
does that kind of process inform again? Like I feel like you going into the archive on YouTube and like again it goes back to the title of your exhibition from Mirror Mirror, looking back. It's like you're looking back through music, you're looking back through magazines, you're looking back at your photography and kind of rearranging things and like trying to figure out like maybe some new ideas from it. And I think for me as a fan of art and a fan of your work, I can go into it and kind of like look back myself and be like, what was he thinking in this process? Like, how do I relate to it? What are kind of my ideas? What do I take from this photograph? I think even for like the roses at home, it's very poetic and it's kind of just like inspires me. I'm like, oh, like what can I do at home that is very kind of like I could kind of like create um, an environment for myself to kind of like photograph things, and I really appreciate you sharing that on the platform. But back to kind of like the question I wanted to ask is when it comes to music, how what does that have a place in like your creative process in terms of like the way you take photos as well?
You know what? I think music is becoming more important when it comes to books, when it comes to like magazines, movies.
Mhm.
They've always played, and music is something that I still like. Again, I have a huge respect for music heads, like those DJs like you, and people that really immerse themselves in music. Um,
Mhm.
Latin music was always part of my house, living in Colombia and then growing up in Miami. But it's something that I've never really like paid attention until like now later as an adult. And I'm doing that currently, and I think that's why exercises of immersing myself a whole day of seeing footage of salsa music, like sharing that stuff, like really learning the history of salsa music.
Right.
Like I think a lot of like people that know about hip hop, they know the history, and they're able to talk about for hours about it, good references and things like that. I want to be like that for like Latin music, like being able to
Right.
have those conversations. And that's why I was like, I'm going to use this opportunity to really dive in.
Yeah.
Um, and technically or in general, like having music in the studio, having music while I'm shooting here at home, it's always something that I enjoy, obviously.
Yeah. I'm very, I just had a thought about when you said music in the studio. I'm very interested to kind of like see, again, an experiment that I'm coming up with in my head where it's like, if
Yeah.
you, if you play, let's say trap music or gospel music or dance music, how does that affect the outcome of the image versus you having salsa music in the background?
uh, I,
Like,
uh,
I mean, we might not have the answer right now, but I'm very curious to see those images side by side to see the kind of, because obviously music has like an effect on the way you think, and like I wonder if there's something like a shift in like the way you take the photo because your body's moving a certain way. Like, I mean, that's just an idea I just came up with, but
no, but no, but it's a great thought and it's a great exercise.
yeah,
I can say that most of the work that I do is portraiture, and especially when it happens in the studio. When what I like about the studio is that it's an environment that you can control most of the time, compared to
right,
like shooting outside or shooting a party or like being a guest in a party and photographing it. I always prefer to shoot in the studio again because I can control that. And one of the things that you can control is the music.
right,
And maybe someone has done a video about this. I mean, you just came up with that exercise of seeing what how music affects images. But
yeah,
when it comes to the subject, because if I'm shooting it one day and I know the subjects that are coming in the studio, since the moment I wake up, I'm already on that set of mind. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do this today, and I get there. So if the radio breaks, I'm still on that set of mind. But when it comes
right,
to the subject, music makes a huge difference of how you can affect the subject, and hopefully the subject gives you what you want. Like I've
right,
seen it with my own eyes of like you're playing a track and it's not happening, and maybe someone that knows that subject in the studio comes in and is like, yo, she loves this artist. If you play the artist, she's gonna give you everything. You go
mm,
change it and the subject right away. So technically, it for me in my experience, it definitely affects subjects. Like when you're getting photographed and you're listening to good music, whew, like you can really give it all, right? And then you hop on that. See, I may not like the song that maybe the subject likes, but I'll like it just to get what I need. I don't care.
right,
Like, what do you want to listen to? And like
mm,
that's one of the my favorite questions to ask a subject that I'm photographing is like, what do you want to listen to today? And I'll listen to that all day if she wants to or he wants to. So
right. That's interesting. I guess last question to wrap it up.
yeah, yeah.
Would you consider yourself a photographer or image maker?
Um, can you go into it? What do you mean? What do you mean?
Yeah, so I guess like to quickly go into it, like I think when I think about photographs, I think of like, obviously it's like maybe the big DSLR camera, you need to know the technicalities of like, taking the picture. While images is just an image, you can manipulate it and whatever, whether you can use an iPhone. So I'm always curious to know whether like, especially with, art, this movement, like digital media and stuff like that, like, are you creating
Uh-huh.
images in your photographs? Like,
Yeah. 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 And I think we talked about it a little bit earlier today. Um, I, I mean, I can speak from like the experiences that I had in the, especially in the past 3 years, working on, say, with flowers or the images that are up on the website right now. When I was working, when I was shooting um, at the flower market, it was definitely one of the first times that I was. It felt that I was like creating images, like making photographs, right? Like
right,
spending time creating. I think that's one of the um, advantage of maybe like even like shooting film. I know early on we were talking about like equipment. Like I think that's a whole conversation that we can have.
yeah,
Um,
go a long way.
but it's definitely on ongoing uh, idea that's in my head, and I think it's in a lot of people that are creating things. Is like
Yeah,
the difference between creating personal work and commercial work and what goes into it. With Faye with Flowers, every single thing about that project was decided by me, which other work, even when I do creatives with a stylist, now they're part of it. So we're, you know what I mean? Like that difference is it's always interesting, and it's
right.
something that like I'm always like navigating and trying to find answers.
Mhm.
Um, making those still lives at home or taking pictures, it was definitely a good it felt like I was making those images for sure.
Word. That's dope, man. Yeah, we'll keep the conversation going offline. I just want to thank you so much for obviously sharing your artwork on Mirror Mirror and having this conversation with us today. Thank you so much.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, cheers.
Good to see you. Take care. Bye.
Bye.